Okay, thanks everyone for coming back to your favorite interior design podcast. My name is Stephanie Stuart, your host, and I am so excited today to be here with our guest, Shannon Prince-Thomas, also known as SPT. I like to hashtag it whenever I say it. So if you guys are only listening and you're not on YouTube, you can't see how cute she is and how much fun we're going to have. But anyways, I have Shannon here today. She's going to talk about so many different parts of the construction journey and different parts of design and how they all fit together. We have a lot of people that listen to the podcast that are from all different backgrounds. Some people are building their own home, some people are renovating, some people are in commercial doing TIs. And I just want to give you the perspective from somebody who's kind of done it all. So with that, Shannon, do you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your design journey?
Yes. Thanks for the intro. I am SPT. That acronym kind of came up naturally professionally because my name was too long for most people to write, and people still take liberties in assigning me an email address. So SPT kind of sticks, and
I like it.
everyone usually smiles when they say it. So I am classically trained as an architect. I have an undergrad in interior design, and then I went on and got my master's in architecture. The push to go the architecture route was certainly the master's was because I wanted to teach and have the opportunity to do that, which I've done at UC Berkeley. I've done that at Kenyatta College, which is a JC, and it's always been in the landscape interior design kind of world.
Nice.
So that's kind of where that aspired. And then obviously that, allowed me to have quite a few other opportunities, and got me into kind of commercial architecture where I was doing everything from, I have experience in religious sites. I worked for a firm that did only Greek Orthodox churches,
Okay.
which is very niche.
So that's a thing. Yeah.
That is a thing. From everything from like custom light fixtures to custom mosaics on
Wow.
the
Well,
interior.
I bet that was so fun because there's a lot. No, not fun. A lot.
I,
It was a lot. I'm sure
fun,
it's a great
fun.
learning experience, maybe.
Yeah, I always say it. It was a great experience, and it allowed me to figure out that that is not something I want to continue doing.
Okay.
So checking that one off the list. So that's kind of where it started, and then I ended up, I was at Studios Architecture, which had a global presence, and then recession hit, and I was doing ground up work. So I was doing base building work, a lot of educational facilities. I had a big project at UC Berkeley that was ground up. It was like a state of the art physics and astronomy building. And then kind of recession hit. I was lucky to still have a job, and I got sucked into the tech world. And that's
Okay.
that's where I still am today. And I didn't get stuck there, but it was hard for me to pivot and go back into base building after, God, that recession took me through 5 years of, I did a shit ton of bathroom renovations for Apple.
Nice.
So I can do those in my sleep. So
Perfect.
renovated like their entire campus.
Okay, pop quiz. How many bathroom stalls do you need for however many people?
Oh my God, what?
I'm
No,
just
I'm
kidding.
not doing plumbing calculations for you right now. Do not do that to me. You're gonna have to call.
I had somebody ask me how many parking spots they needed. I was like, I'm an interior designer. There's a calculation for that, but I don't know it. I can certainly look it up.
And you have to like go to your municipality and see what their ratio, like it's a whole thing. Anyway, that's why they need to hire design professionals, because people think that they know. Like oh my God, that's so funny. I had a IT guy because he's having some issues. So I'm in the commercial space right now on the client side, right? So we had our IT department in this particular section of the floor. They're having some issues. So and it was some mechanical issues, and he like immediately he's like, well, the landlord told us this, and I know that's not right. So I pulled up the code and I sent it to him, and it reads this, and it's like, okay.
Okay.
So I'm glad that you are savvy enough to know that there's like a building code and there's regulations and things like that. However, there are circumstances and exceptions to everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyways, thank you for sharing. I will take a noted, and I got it from here. So it's funny what people come up with. So
I know. No, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, keep going.
no, so where did I? So then I
You
get
did the renovations for Apple.
renovate. Yeah, that was hellish, but Apple treats, and I did some really cool spaces that are confidential and just I will never forget. I was in a meeting one time, and I was there with the human interface group, which is basically the designers behind how you as a human interact with the iPhone, like
Okay.
look at the buttons, how you touch it, what the sound effects, all that kind of stuff. They're this group, and this group was modeled to be like 22 to 35. And once you hit like 35, you kind of like transitioned out because you were no longer the primary demographic.
Okay. Okay.
That has changed.
Yeah.
However, that was the thing back then. So I was working.
Now, I'm sure it's changed now because even 35-year-olds are having their parents buy their phones, so.
Well, and like 35-year-olds are like old now,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you and I are having our kid. I mean, we're not 35, but
right.
We're not 50, and our kids are still like, how did you get that? And it's like, oh, mom, just let me. It's like, why is this intuitive for you? I don't understand. Like,
I have Cody do the TV for me all the time, and that's just a remote control. I mean, that's not even. I'm like, Cody, can you put it back on the regular TV, please?
Yeah. What input? Why do I have 5 inputs? This is stupid.
I just want the TV. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So the user interface group
and so we were in a meeting, and of course, I have a budget. I'm on the design side at this point, so we're designing towards this budget, and they're wanting to do some outrageous stuff. Cool. I am here for it. However, as your responsible design partner, I need to adhere to the budget that I was given, and just let you know, I'm not saying no, but I'm just saying, if you want this is now what it's going to cost. And his response was like appreciative, but at the same time, he's like, do you understand how many iPhones we sold last year? How many billions of iPhones we sold? Or I don't know, how many billions of dollars we made off of the iPhone last year? Yeah. Like, no. And he's like, we should get whatever we want. And I'm like, I'm not here to argue with you at all.
Right.
However, you technically didn't hire me. This guy did. And he's telling me I got to stay in this lane. So let's have a conversation, but I'm here I am your conduit to just make shit happen. So let's go. Anyways,
that's great.
So then that was tech. And then I left that firm specifically because I was not supported as a working mother.
Okay.
Which is upsetting. That first-time mom working with, I hate to say it, in architecture, I was literally the one female on an all-male team.
Right. Yeah.
And, I was like reserving conference rooms with a little, I remember this on an index card. I wrote 15-minute meeting with the girls, and I had a rubber band like punched through it. And I would hang that on the doorknob to let people know, like, hey, enter at your own risk. Like, you're not giving me a place to do this. So this is what I have to do. And so that all worked out fine, but I had to like unplug a bunch of stuff to like plug in my pump and things. And the one female principal would write these passive aggressive Post-it notes. She knew exactly who was in that room, and there was never a conversation. And let me add, like, she is married to architecture, does not have children, has a job that she treats as a child. So like, she's a little disconnected in that realm. So anyways, she wrote these passive aggressive Post-it notes that said, if you're going to unplug any equipment, please remember to get back in. And it's not like I'm unplugging a printer that like is going to take a year to like recalibrate everything. Like, I'm literally unplugging a Polycom. Like, you can just plug it back in.
Oh, or
you can like create a space for me to do what I need to do legally.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, I have had a different experience because I'm usually on the interior design side, right? Because I even took Cody, my son, my second kid, to work with me. So I stayed home for like 4 weeks, and then I took him to work with me, and I would wear him I would wear him
Wrapped.
in the sling thing, wrapped on, and I would be on the phone. And then sometimes he was a good baby. He was a sleeper. Madison would have never been able to stay at work with me. She was all over the place.
The
But
FOMO.
so yeah, totally. But sometimes I would give him to my friend behind me because we were like in this pod together, and she would wear him while I was on the phone.
Oh
And
my
I
God.
have pictures of her at work wearing him, and she's another designer. And I was gonna put women-owned business on my website one time, and everyone's like, every interior design business is women owned. So I'm sorry that you had that experience, and I can totally understand because it's a whole different side of the ball game, right? Like when we go into construction meetings, usually we are, one of the, few females, and so same thing for you in architecture, as well.
Yeah.
That's just another, I don't know,
Yeah.
couple bucks.
Yeah. And I mean, aside from the fact, I've pumped in my car more times than I know being on the job
That's what all
site.
the sales reps always talk about. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's real life. And you get through it, but when people can't carve out a little bit of grace for like, hey, I'm already like struggling here to like just figure out my life. Those post-it notes are really fucking helping right
Really,
now.
really not
Thank
happy. So
you.
I'm glad you left there though. So you got out
Yeah.
of there and you moved on, but
I left there abruptly, and then I went to kind of project management side, so
Mhm.
commercial real estate. Did that because I just am like, I need a check-in, check-out job while I figure out this mom thing.
Yeah.
But I have like PTSD from that situation. And then of course I go back into design and I end up at Gensler running, managing a lot of global accounts. So Yahoo's, I didn't do any Apple work there, but Electronic Arts, Accenture, I probably can't actually say any of those names, but maybe you can edit that out. Anyways, so yeah, then I ended up at Gensler. Um,
But so you
and
did global work there. So tell me
yeah,
about that, because that's a whole different ball game too. Because even like regionally, I recently had a client and we were building a home and he was a snowbird. And if anyone doesn't know what that means, I can't believe it. But I'm just saying that it's somebody who comes into Arizona and stays during the winter, and then they go back to their home other places because the summer's too hot. But he was building here, and I told him, we were talking about the laundry room, and he's a bachelor and he like didn't really care about the laundry room. I'm like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, like the laundry room's more than laundry room here. It's a utility room, because you can't keep your paint in the garage and you can't keep your masking tape in the garage. Like no adhesives in the garage. They're going to be toast after one summer. Like you can barely keep your Christmas stuff in there, but you do. And then you just see what's left at the end of the year. But, next Christmas comes around. But it's like, it's regionally, it's like he would have never thought of that because he's from
yeah,
Washington. And I'm like,
yeah.
you need more storage in your, laundry room because this is a utility room. And he was just so surprised. And that is such a small example of like something that, we know from experience, but talk to me like
Yeah.
on a global level, because that is something.
So global is really the biggest thing to adapt to, and this is what I try to coach and mentor my team on, is like, just because we think we're the subject matter experts, or maybe we're developing standards or guidelines for a client or whatnot, and they're coming with like a United States, North America, lens, right? That doesn't mean that it can automatically apply to other places in the world.
Mhm.
That's everything from types of power, how much power, how we condition air, codes. Like I'm
Right.
constantly marking up drawings that have furniture like right in front of a door, which is a completely no-fly zone here in the States, but they can do it a lot of times in other parts of the world and not worry about somebody
That's
who.
why design is so great. Whenever we travel, I have so much fun. It's like, oh, can you hear that?
Yeah, no, I got you.
Okay, it's like a feedback. Okay, it's just stopped. Okay, so whenever we travel, I have so much fun because I look at everything and I'm just like, that's not to code. That's not to code. That's not
Yeah.
to code. And I'm like,
But
oh my
like
God.
it is.
But it's not in the United States, right? And I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
wish I could do that. And then, and then Ken, says, my husband, he's like, like that's not to code. Yeah, I'm like, I'm gonna do that. And he's like, no, you're not. I'm like, oh, shit. And then I got this new vendor, and it's a lighting vendor. And I'm like, so excited. I'm looking through the book. Nothing is UL. Nothing is UL. And so
That's a big one.
okay, so talk about that real UL. Tell everyone what UL is real quick.
So that is what is that? The certification on lighting that is required for California, UL listed. It has a certification number or something,
Yeah,
right?
and more than California, most commercial projects require it, and some.
Well, sorry, states.
Yeah, okay.
Everything in the states has to be UL listed.
Yeah, okay.
And that becomes problematic because a ton of our lighting, like general lighting, does come from Canada. So there's usually a Canada specific UL, and then I think for the states there's another one. You can carve out the California piece and then add the Title 24 component to it, which like takes us to a whole different type of conversation. But I had a project in LA one time, and we had international designers that were kind of doing design intent of like, okay, this is the vibe, this is the big picture of how we're going to design this space. And they wanted all this lighting to come from Europe, and we couldn't get it to work. We even tried to modify it to the point where then we can go in and try to get it UL certified.
Yeah.
And we could. So like it's a big thing, not to mention lighting is usually a long lead time depending on what you're getting.
Yeah.
So that international is it's a totally different game, but it really it forces you to lean in to expertise, the local expertise,
Well,
right?
and I just want to pop back to the UL thing one more time, because a lot of our listeners aren't global. They, might just be here in the States, and they might think, oh, well, this doesn't apply to me because it's commercial. But I want to say that it also applies to residential, because some states do require it for code, but also some installers won't even install it if it's not UL listed. And so if you're a homeowner and you're building, or if you're doing a renovation project with a general contractor that's bonded, licensed, and insured, they may not, and you want to buy your own lighting, they may not be willing to install your lighting. So if you're hopping on Home Depot, Wayfair, wherever you go, they're sold commercially. It's not just like you went to the dime store and you went, and got some janky stuff. Popular places sell not UL listed. And especially if you're looking on Amazon or Wayfair, you can get beautiful fixtures that are great fixtures, but a professional will not install them. So just be mindful of it. I had a contractor tell me the homeowner bought all this lighting. It's sitting in the garage, ready to install. He can't install any of it. And so now the lead time, like you said, now they have to wait for UL listed actual products to be able to move forward with the build. And so I just wanted to throw a flag there.
Most of the lighting websites that you go to, they will very clearly say if it's UL certified or not. But like the Amazons and the Wayfair, like you got to go into the description to really kind of uncover
way down.
Yeah, what that is.
And some of them you can filter by it, and some of them you can't. And so it's really something, I think that's a big deal. I think you really found a good point. So anyways, okay.
Well, and then back to that, like the not being able to get them installed, I think that is a violation of their electrician
license.
Exactly. So it's just, you can always find somebody on Nextdoor probably to install it, but the UL cert is really saying it's been tested to whatever standards.
And it's for safety, right? We all can take some risk. I can hang something on the ceiling, but am I going to be afraid it's going to fall? Probably, but then I don't have to hire someone to do it. So it's the same thing. Right. Yeah, I was really bummed about that vendor, because they have a section in the back, that's about this small, and the whole thing I'm showing on my fingers for people that are just listening, but it's like a 3-inch catalog, and then it's got like a 1/4-inch section of UL listed. So just something really that's relevant to everybody. But that's one small example of, something that we can help you with that, goes along with your global experience. But what are some, what's something crazy that's happened to you in your global experience? Do you have anything?
Global, I would say probably the biggest discrepancy that has been problematic from like overall execution schedule is really just like how we do a set of drawings here in the States and like what
Okay.
our expectations are of like,
Yeah.
these are all the things that should be included in a complete set, regardless of how you're contracting, whether it's fully engineered, where you have all your professional engineers doing a set of drawings that's tightly coordinated, and then you hand that over to a contractor, or you're doing more of a design build where you're kind of marrying both of those processes together. The way that each country does that process is different. So for instance, I did a project in Tokyo, and the design team did a whole set of drawings, beautiful set of drawings, very high detail articulation, which I think you could probably imagine.
Right.
When we go to select a contractor, you go out to RFP, select a contractor, the contractor and their team literally redraw the entire set of drawings on their cover, their title block and everything, because it's like the working drawings, but they're literally redrawing detail, like every single piece of that is redrawn from the contractor's lens. And then reapproved and all of that kind of stuff. So that was a unique experience. That went great, but it was just like, this seems so redundant and like a waste of effort. But
right.
That's
What they
how
do.
that's how they run. And then I'm working on a project right now in Barcelona, and that is a shit show. And it's just,
But I
they
love
don't-
Barcelona. It can't be a shit show.
so
It's
do
my
I would
favorite.
move there in a heartbeat, but
I heard that you're supposed to do, what are the kids doing it different these days? I'm making a heart with my hands. Did you see it online? They do it different.
they
They do
well,
something different.
I'd have to ask. Yeah, I think it's more finger.
You have to ask your teenagers. Okay, anyway,
I'd have
sorry.
to ask
I
my
love
teenager.
Barcelona. So why is it a shit show?
So yeah, it's a shit show because they want approval on something before they draw it. And you know, as a designer, you're like, well, okay, so in theory, yes, like this is what I want. I'm basically authorizing you to explore it, but they want, no, this is like, I need you to approve it so then I can draw it, so then I can go get a price for it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, but if that price is wild, then I'm gonna squash it. So like, help me help you. Like I can't, don't pin me in a corner. And it's a different way of doing things that I was not prepared for. Nor did I build enough contingency to protect me. So
let's talk about some of it. Let's talk about contingency. That's one thing also that, we run into all the time is the timeline, is how are we setting expectations? A lot of people come to us with their expectations and they don't really realize the process, and that's okay. That's why we're here. That's why I'm doing this podcast. I
100%.
want to give all the information. You wanted to teach people. That was your, one of your goals. And I want to educate people because we want them to have as much information and go into the process loving it, right? You want them to enjoy the journey and the end result, right? Because it's fun. You're investing. So say a home, you're investing in your dream home and you're getting to be creative and have a lot of fun. But if you don't know what to expect, it's going to be a big challenge. And so timeline is one of those things that we talk a lot about, is that designing up front, just like you were saying, also, like you can't approve it before you draw it because you don't know what you're approving, because the drawings are your contract with the.
Right. Well, and that partners with the contract. So like there's certain liberties one can take to say like, okay, in concept on this paper, this is what I want, but because it's not detailed and the next person needs to know like, okay, well, how are these connections coming together, or how do you want this to get articulated? Based on how you want that countertop edge articulated will change the cost, right? And so there's all these little things that do need to get worked out. And if you have a contingency or an allowance in there to allow a little bit of buffer, if you are going on the design build where you're kind of doing things
Fluid.
Yeah, exactly. Then that gives you a little bit of cushion to be like, okay, I feel safe that we're swimming in this pool with
Right.
this money, and that at the end of the day, I won't be shocked.
Right. And that goes
So
along with timeline too. So I heard that you did a project on HGTV.
I did.
Tell me about
Yes,
that.
that was wild. So they were friends of mine, super great friends of mine. It was a pilot. They were actually asked to come back for a second season, and they're just like, no, we can't. Like, for how into the design and like to design to be for the design and the process to be true to us, like it doesn't fit with the demand of like HDTV, recorded series. So it was great. I will say nothing happened that doesn't happen on a regular project.
Right.
So owners are changing their mind. They want a larger window, and now I need to revise structural drawings, and now I need to call for a special inspection, and I need to, pull a different permit because now I have it's just all of that. Or like, hey, we didn't want to wrap those beams. Oh, now we do. Okay, like we're supposed to film this, like the final reveal in 2 days. Like I can't wrap beans in 2 days, but can we? You know what I mean? So
Right.
there's a lot of that. I do feel like, and I think this was part of like just because you add that so you take a normal home improvement or renovation or a build process, right? So like we're working directly with the contractor and the client, and
Hmm.
we're having a common goal. On HGTV specifically, you're adding the film crew
Hmm.
schedule, the post-production schedule. So like as we're filming content, that content is getting captured and sending off to post-production to start editing. So they're editing as we go. They don't just wait for hours and hours of footage to like comb through. They're taking
Yeah.
snippets, right? To try to build the story. And so as you're having those moments of like, not failure, but just like, okay, fork in the road. How do we want to solve this? Right. Or
Well,
change.
that's a true professional. I just want to make note of your skill level right there, because you're like not a challenge or not a failure, but a fork in the road and something that, and that's literally our job all the time, is
Yeah.
like not minimizing challenges, but just saying to people, it's not as bad as this can be solved. Like we have it's construction. I'm not a brain surgeon for a reason. First of all, that sounds disgusting, but second of all, not smart enough for it, and it's lives. This is homes.
Well, in a lot of ways, it's like, especially when you're buying an older home or like, a home that nobody's been and explored and opened up walls, right? So it's kind of like a choose your own adventure, right? Like, okay, if we want to do this and we're all in agreement, we want to do this, what's behind door number two? Like, we're going to open stuff up and we might be surprised.
Right.
I don't know, right? And so, but prepping, as it relates back to schedule, prepping the homeowner for like, okay, if we want to do this, like we're also going to need this, and we're going to need this, and we're going to need this, and it's probably going to add another week and a half to the schedule.
Right.
Or this will add an extra additional cost, and we can do it in parallel to everything else. We'll just shift, because construction schedule, everything is in sequence. So if this one thing shifts, then everything that's attached to that one thing typically can shift. Sometimes, depending on where you are in that process, you can kind of be on top of each other, or you can do things in parallel or literally right behind each other. But that's never ideal, is to be in each other's space, right? Like,
Right.
I want to finish this, and then I want the tiler in, and like no one else can be in here working above, because like, let's be real, right? So I think that our job as design professionals, whether we're on the construction side or like the design side, is like we have a responsibility to educate our clients on like, okay, you want this? No one's saying no. It's all possible.
Right.
It's
Right.
all possible at a cost and with more time.
Hmm.
Um, or we can like jerry rig it and spray paint some stuff just to get it done, but like it's not going to hold up, and
And
it's
you're
just
not
looks
gonna like it.
stupid,
And
and you're not going to like it.
when you're sitting on the sofa watching TV, you're gonna stare at that one thing every time, and you're gonna be like, oh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So
we didn't wait for it.
No, but it's our job to like articulate that. And I will say, with all of my different experience, having that is a superpower. Being
Mhm.
able to communicate to clients, to be able to speak their to me, and you're not speaking down to them. You're just like deconstructing
You're
it.
meeting where they are,
Yeah,
like,
and you're deconstructing it to where they're like, okay, those are all the pieces, not like here's the sandwich.
yeah,
And
right.
it's going to cost what? Like they have to understand all the pieces in aggregate that come up that deliver that, right?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of sausage making being exposed, right? And,
Yeah,
a little bit of like, they don't have to worry about this because we can solve this as a team, and it's
yeah,
not hiding anything. It's just literally solving it on your own because you don't need another, approval for something,
right,
because it
right.
might be just apples to apples. But
Well, and we're doing all that stuff behind the curtain without the client even knowing.
right,
You're fork in the road every day. Okay, what do you want to do about this? What do you want to do about this? There's a header that I didn't know was there and I can't put a light there. So how are we going to shift everything? Or are we okay with eliminating or realigning this one
right.
fixture? Like, those are all decisions that the owners don't need to, like, that's why you're hiring us to
Okay,
make decisions for you.
Okay, I have a good example of that. We were doing a residential project and the homeowner, they were out of state from the build. And so they also didn't have great spatial awareness on a 2D plan, which is normal. Looking at
Totally
a
normal.
plan set from 2D when you're not used to doing it is challenging, really challenging. That's why now we do all of our models in 3D on all of our projects. So it doesn't matter if it's a bedroom or if it's a full build, we're going to do a model, whether or not, to what level it's
Rendered and yeah.
yeah, if it's
Mhm.
just black and white, or if it has all your stuff in it, or if it's fully rendered, that's to what level of package you choose. But 3D models, number one, is helpful. But looking at a 2D plan, they couldn't tell, and ends up that they wanted to swap the living room and dining room. It was a great room, and they're like, we're gonna have a bigger table for Thanksgiving. We swapped them, and like on paper, because there's no furniture in there yet, so we had to change the lighting, because in the middle of a family room you don't have a chandelier,
Right.
whatever. Well, bottom line is it rolled into the trusses were in the way, and so we couldn't get the things up there, and this and this and this, right? And then the wires were already pulled and it was already drywalled, and so it was creating all this extra drywall work. And so we're like,
Mhm.
how bad do you want it? Well, guess what? They wanted it bad. So we did all the things, and that's amazing. They moved it back after they moved in. It didn't end up working. And they have back the dining room in the dining room place and the living room in the living room place.
Ah.
But if we had had a 3D model, I'm just going to say I came on that project late. So I was the second designer. There was a designer already on the project.
Oh, so you're already on damage control.
I had to stop the project. A very, very unpopular decision, but I said, I need time to literally order every sample and process it. And it's a good thing I did, because some of the samples didn't exist. They were just pictures on concepts, and they weren't on
Mhm.
the finished schedule yet. And some of the things weren't what they said they were. So like weren't appropriate materials for that usage. Like when you're speccing a shower floor, it has to be not just a floor tile, a shower floor tile. And
Oh,
again,
I don't know how many people make that mistake. I think my own sister, my dad critiqued my sister's bathroom and she was sending me tile selections. And I'm like, just make sure, like, whatever color you want, style, I don't care, but just make sure it is explicit. And I would order a sample and get it wet and stand on it with soapy feet and see how it does.
it's totally true, because also, heads up, people, there's a wet coefficient of friction, which is going to be the COF at the bottom of the thing, and you're not going to want to read any of that stuff. But if it's not, if it's too slippery, it's dangerous, and a
Yes.
professional's not going to let you do it. But you might think it looks cool, and you might install it, and that's just straight up dangerous. And that's your everyday life, just taking a shower. Imagine how much thought goes in. I had a client and they were like, I don't want small tile on the floor in the shower. I don't want, a bunch of grout lines. It's too much to clean. And I'm like, Okay, the grout lines provide security. This is like, you know, that grip tape, like in the back of the
Yeah,
stairwell at the, you
yeah,
know, what, like the fire escape, that grip tape, that's what your grout is doing on the shower floor. So we'll give you a darker grout. How about that? You know, and then we'll epoxy or, you know, we'll cut, whatever, we'll put a sealant on it, but we'll manage that another way because it's for a reason. You know,
totally.
I
No,
mean, it
yeah,
can be done. I'm not saying that you can't not have, you know, penny rounds on the shower tile, but I'm just saying that's why majority of them you see that. So anyways, there's a reason behind the madness, but anyways, yeah,
yeah.
it's about setting
Well, and
expectations.
unfortunately, on the client side, like those are tough lessons. Like your living room, your great room, dining
Mhm.
room, like
Yeah,
that's a very tough, expensive, hard lesson
right,
to learn, without saying I told you so, but
right, right.
like, okay,
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you know, I'm not trying to minimize home building, right? It's very important. It's a lot of money. Generally, a
very
purchase
personal, way
very
more personal than commercial spaces.
for sure. And it's, you know, usually what do they say? The largest purchase anyone makes in their lifetime, right? You know, I mean, we're not out buying
Uh-huh.
airplanes. I mean, some people are, that's cool. If you're buying an airplane, call me, I'll help you build your house. But you know, that it is very important, you know, however, it's not life or death. And so
Uh,
if you need to pause, because it is so important, if you need to slow down to speed up, then, you know, that's what you got to do. So
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. Well, and I think that's also, every client is going to want something different, especially with homes, like open concept versus like, the Thanksgiving table. That might be very popular in a cultural thing for their house to just like that is a host and that's an anchor point, and that's great to know. But like as another example, my own family moved us up north, built a log cabin that is still like not finished because my dad refuses to hire anyone to help him do it, right? But it's this huge house that was never completed while we were kids. And like here, I have children of my own that come to this house that's still not completed. And it's like also kind of like, it's our responsibility, I think, as well, to kind of help clients decide like, okay, are you set up to build a custom home and to take on that challenge, the risk, the stress, all the decisions, or do you want just like a track home where you're just making finished selections from a very small limited section,
right,
and like, or we renovate one room and let that be custom and call it good.
right,
But to know where, I don't know, I don't know how anyone does that really successfully, except by kind of sharing war stories of like, okay, this is what this means, again back to the communication and the timeline, this is how much commitment I need from you,
right,
or this is how much autonomy I need from you
right,
to make decisions on your behalf. But
right.
if we don't know each other, like that's a really crazy trust exercise that I would love, but hey, it's your money, right?
That's funny. Well, even in the commercial side, because say that it's, I mean, a large company, right? You work for a large company right now and you have for a while, and there's a budget because it's a machine, you know, and
Yep.
every location plays a role. And, you know, for that team that you were talking about earlier on Apple, I mean, on the phone company,
Right.
the team that you were talking about, you know, for them, but they're seeing the end result, you know, and they're like, we do this, we want this, right? So that's like your clients right now are the employees, but you work for essentially corporate, and there's a huge global budget that you're managing, and each
Yeah.
individual site falls within that, and they're only seeing things in a silo. You know, they're seeing their own space, and they don't
Yes.
see what happens with all the other spaces. And so in a commercial setting too, like in a small commercial setting where someone's doing a TI, maybe, you know, they're an entrepreneur and they have their first business. I mean, that's their baby, you know, like, and so the construction there is, you know, how important is the traffic flow for sales, right? If people feel comfortable in the space, you know, it's all important, you know.
Well, and things evolve over time, right? So like your startup company, how they identify space, or even like a very mature, commercial company taking on new space, depending on what user groups come into that space organically or move out of that space because the market's changed or whatever, like those space types will have to either evolve or get scrapped and reiterated. And so like an example of that is I was working for another tech firm and we were building out classrooms to train on their product.
Mm-hmm.
Like hands-on, you're here for the week, you bought our product, and now we're going to show you how to use it. But then COVID hit and like no one's doing anything in person on site at all. So we spent hundreds of, like these classrooms were state of the art. The monitors alone were $100,000.
Wow.
And so like these were expensive rooms that then we just scrapped post COVID because like it evolved to where it's like, hey, we can do these just as successfully remotely. Then we're not flying people around the world to like be here for a week when they don't want to be here for a week.
Yeah.
And like, and same thing with homes, so many people design or renovate homes with their small children in mind. They want things to be accessible or adaptable or scaled appropriately. And they forget that those little kids are very soon going to be big teenagers that just require
full-size grown humans,
real humans that just require different space.
Yeah.
And so like, it's our job to remind them of like, well, hey, let's design what you need, but also build in some flexibility so we can pivot later without it being this huge, effort.
Well, we haven't talked about this and we only have a few minutes left, but I was just curious how much, speaking of flex spaces, of furniture do you deal with in your design or in your, overview of what your scope?
Yeah, commercial and in the commercial world, flex furniture, we're always moving furniture around. So, the problem is with a lot of commercial furniture, the size is big. It's not these small, petite, beautiful little well, maybe more in Europe. We'll get some of that.
People are smaller. The food, the scoops of ice cream are smaller.
Everything. But yeah, so everything is big, and flex, I think, has translated in a different way because flexible in some people's minds just means it's movable.
Mm-hmm.
And you can plug it here and then move it and plug it there, right?
Yeah.
Do people actually ever do that? Like I have a modular sofa that is like, can turn into a bed. It has never left that position. So like, I love that it can do all those things, but the reality is it will probably never do those things.
We get that all the time. Well, what if we want to? And it's like, sure, you're not going to.
You won't. So yeah, so I think really the flexibility when we're talking about flexible options is like, okay, one, what is the lifespan of it in terms of fabric selection? All your double rubs and what, how much do you want to spend for high-end fabric?
Right.
And how long do you want it to last?
Right.
Because if you want to reupholster this every few years, cool. But if you don't, and you have dogs and like
and that goes back again to someone who knows what double rubs are and how to read the specs on them, right? So
right. So one, durability I think adds to the flexibility, and then also power is a big thing, especially with desks. Do you want it height adjustable? Almost everything comes height adjustable now, but if you're tight on budget, that comes at a premium. So and then also there's a weight load. So not every height adjustable piece of furniture can house a 40-inch monitor if that's your jam, because 40-inch monitors are heavy.
Yeah. Well, I even have a height adjustable desk here. And when I built the office, we had the floors redone. So we put in the outlets in the floors, and I had my layout different. And now I've changed it, and my floor outlet doesn't work in the right place. And it stops me from rolling over. Like it's annoying. And so it's in the wrong place now. And I'm a designer and I built the space to lay out one way, and it's like, if I, whatever, thought that I might move it, I might have put the floor outlet in a place where my desk would pivot, because literally it's just, so it's like, I don't know, you just,
more neutral,
so you win some, you lose some, but you have a better chance if you, think it through.
Well, and that's a great scenario because in the commercial space, when we're doing larger like training rooms or all hands space, like we're doing several different furniture layouts to make sure that we allocate power in the right spot for all the different configurations. So it's not in between somebody's legs and you're running power cords everywhere and stuff like that. Right.
Right.
And the same thing I think should probably as more of a standard practice apply to residential. And I don't know if we do it enough. You might do it, but I I mean, I've done it for myself personally, but not for a client where you're like, okay, you can configure the living room this way or this way or
We
this way,
do.
right?
We call it our furniture first approach. So literally we look at
Of that.
we look at the floor plans and get down the fenestration and make sure the doors aren't banging into each other and that, you know,
Yep.
windows are in the right place and they'll glare on the TV. And then number two is we look at what's already existing with the architect. And then our first thing is to design furniture. And we're going through
Yeah.
that right now with a client, and they are changing their floor plan based on the furniture because we are looking at it from an interior design lens on the inside out. And we say, okay, I said, okay, I know that we don't know where the roof lines are going to be, but we need to look at furniture now. And the architect's like, yes. So because they're not thinking of it from the inside
Yeah.
out. And we have literally moved rooms like a bunch because
Which
of
is
where the furniture.
crazy. And I mean, furniture is furniture. Furniture is disposable in my mind. And I say that joking because so we lived in San Francisco for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And when we first got married and we bought a very expensive couch in my mind, it was like $5,000 and we still have it to this day. It's our most favorite couch and we'll probably won't get rid of it until it literally breaks. But anyways, we bought it with the intent of like, okay, we're not going to be in this San Francisco apartment forever. We're going to have this California track home. Like that was like my mindset of like, I'm going to have this 3,500 square foot home that will easily fit in, but I'm investing in this now. So we're just going to make it fit in our San Francisco apartment. And we did successfully. That's all that was in it. But like this couch.
You got it. You got the sofa.
Yeah. So then fast forward to like, hey, we bought our first house, which is not a 3,500 square foot because we still wanted to be in the Bay Area. Right.
Yeah.
And so now we're forcing this couch that is too big for our house into our space because now we're like, I don't know, attached to it.
Right.
I'm willing to release it, but my husband's like, no, it fits me perfect. It's big.
But you know what? That's the right answer is to invest in good furniture and keep it, right? So, okay, go ahead, keep going.
Anyway, it's like 15 years old now. I'm looking at it right now and I still love it. But like there's only so many rooms in my house. Like to make that fit the right way, like I would have had to add on square footage in my house. So like there's a fine line between how much are we adapting the space to fit our furniture?
Right.
And should we do it, right? Like,
well, and I have to say that we've even made rooms smaller because of seeing the furniture layout, because they're like, that's too big. We don't need that there. Like that,
and that's helpful. That is a good exercise to like create that balance of like, is this excessive? Where can I give back this real estate?
And it's 100% gone both ways. But also, I'm going to say one other thing is that we had a breakthrough on our last meeting that by furniture placement, they realized that the fireplace was not symmetrical across the great room with the hood of the kitchen vent, the hood fan or whatever, and the stove. And that was a deal breaker. And the client said, not going to live like this. I need it lined up. And so we are redoing the floor plan to make that happen, but it's okay. The architect and I were both elated that it was found right now. Like, and all he said, consummate professional, Bob, like, he's like, he goes, it's still on paper. It's still on paper. And that's where the furniture layout comes in, because then you can start to see things better instead of just lines and walls and windows. You know, I mean, we are doing 3D, and the 3D model is not done, of course, because we're not 100% on the furniture plan or the floor plan, but we've started doing a little bit of 3D. And that's where we were able to have that realization. And, you know, so we call it our furniture first.
And that's the power of both of those tools, right? The 3D, you get like the spatial realization of like, okay, this is kind of like what the space feels like. The 2D is really where you can like, okay, these aren't aligning. This isn't on a grid. that bothers me. But if I was physically in the space, would it bother me? Like maybe,
And we
maybe
had
not. But
all of that. Yeah. So we are
yeah,
actually making one room, 2 or 3 feet smaller. And we're able to manage that kitchen thing now, because that's a big change to make in the field.
yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyways, that thing, yeah, I just had to hit on furniture because we're like, we do the whole thing from construction all the way to the furniture packages, and it's really
And
important
furniture
to.
almost is even um more personal than the actual home in the space, right?
Right.
Because it's something you're physically experiencing,
Mhm.
and even though you're physically in the space, but like there's a more personal physical connection to you
Right,
sitting on
because
a
you touch it, you feel it, you're
yes,
you're
yeah,
you're with it.
yeah,
And that's why, again, we do the floor plan, hitting on that, because it really does all come together, and you're talking about with the electrical too, we need to, where are the outlets, because where's the sofa going to be? You don't want the outlet in the middle of the walkway. You're not going to string a cord from the lamp and walk into it and trip the lamp off, right? Like, come on.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
anyways, it's all part of the building process, whether it's commercial or
That
residential.
And that brings up another point. So back to the HGTV show, there was one client that had a gigantic island, gorgeous. It was like 15 feet, had to buy like a custom slab size, and they wanted waterfall edge. I'm here for it. 100%. Let's go. Right.
Yeah.
However, code required that we had outlets,
Outlets on the side of, yeah, yeah,
waterfall,
yeah.
which if you think, which so there's a couple things. One, I hate that because like it defeats the purpose of the waterfall, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, do we really need the waterfall, or do we need to like elevate this outlet to like conceal it more? And there's special outlets that you can do that are, designed to match all of that, but we didn't have time. But from a practical standpoint, when you're actually no longer are enthralled by the fact that you have a waterfall edge and you're just trying to functionally use your kitchen, and now you have this 15-foot island with no power.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and then to go back in the fact and try to jerry rig some power into
So did you
stone.
have to install it with no power so that it would show up right on the show?
Oh my God. So we, how did this one work? So we didn't do power, and we got an exception because from the inspector that we didn't need to put power because it was far enough away. It was a service counter, not
So you're
part of
not calling it the
the
kitchen?
kitchen.
Love
Yeah.
it. Love it. Yeah. Love it.
And yeah, so like we skirted around that, but it was just like, this is not like, I would have said add the power and eliminate the waterfall edge, because power is just, you never have enough
It's
power in the kitchen.
functional. It's functional. We were talking about one island for a client, and and the architect said, well, we can make the island bigger, but I don't know who's going to clean the middle of it. And I'm like, like you can't reach
Right?
to right. And
Yeah,
I was like, they're gonna have to get a Swiffer out to clean that
yeah,
thing. To
exactly.
get to the middle of the island, and I've seen kitchens like that, and you're like, sure, maybe somebody with an island that big isn't cleaning their house, but still,
I'm sure they're not.
you're not putting anything in the middle of it either.
Right.
So,
And don't get me wrong, it's beautiful.
oh, sure, yes,
It photographs well.
I'll do it all day. Let's do
Yes,
it.
yes.
But if you're going to
Especially if
use
you can
it,
get some, yeah, exactly. So it's like the form over function, right? Like everything should still be functional, but sometimes we put the blinders on because we want the form to be beautiful, and it really serves no function. And
and
it's like,
sometimes
that's
that's
a
the,
choice. Yes.
exactly. Sometimes that's the goal. The goal is form. And
Yeah.
sometimes the goal is function, and sometimes it's both. And so we
Right.
all make choices.
But to your bachelors who are designing homes without a female influence, God bless you for like, hey, potentially this could be a different situation. So like maybe we should think about this.
Okay, so we do a lot of bachelors. I don't know if you know that, but we actually do a lot of bachelors. I took a thing of my clients, and we do a lot of bachelors. And our our motto. I don't know if we've actually ever said this to one of them, but it's throw her shit out. So that's what we're channeling. Like if they're
Yes.
getting divorced or broke up or, you know, like whatever,
Yeah.
you know, but it's like,
They're in
okay, throw her
transition.
shit out. Cause this is their chance to do their design themselves. And it's
Yes.
so much fun because some of these guys, they've never had the say in it, but yes,
Yeah.
and yes, we help with that functional
Yeah.
perspective. Like, are you actually cooking here? Might someone be cooking here one day?
Might your future second ex-wife be cooking here someday? Maybe. So,
Maybe. So let's think of it. Or you're gonna have a new house by then. So
yeah,
we can do
right,
that
right,
too.
right.
We'll do the
That's the
next
hope.
one.
Yeah, exactly,
Oh my
exactly.
God. Oh, okay. My cheeks hurt from smiling. I say that all the time, but it's true because we had so much fun. Thank you, Shannon, for being on the
Thank
podcast.
you.
Do you want people to find you or do you just want to be cool?
Yeah, I'll just anchor as SPT. If people want to find me, they can find me through you. But other than that, I'm not active on social aside from like me posting family and kids stuff. So, and that's even rare. But yeah,
Okay.
happy to talk later or share experiences or just shoot the shit. So, yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks again for everybody listening. Thank you for coming to your favorite interior design podcast. We had such a great time. If you liked the show, if there's anything valuable, which I'm sure that there was, that you want to share with somebody, then go ahead and like it, share it, subscribe, do all the things. Leave us a 5-star review. Tell us what was amazing. If there's something that you didn't like, you can email me privately. That would be awesome. And we'll take your feedback and do with it what we think is right. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good day.
Bye.
Okay, bye. You're good?
Yeah, that was good. That was fun.